Welcome back to my channel. This is Gina from Her Cosmic Crown, and today we are going to discuss the cards. And I use the Cards of Truth system to do divinations, to do cardology, cartomancy, and the playing cards were actually the first book. And it's an ancient system we use for predictions and for knowing ourselves as well. Since the playing cards correspond to nature, they also correspond to the human development as a whole. What should we expect overall in our teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on? Keep in mind the cards represent the mini cycles that we go through throughout our lives. Just because I'm talking about a decade in general, it doesn't mean that we might not be in that cycle in a different decade or at a different moment. So this is just kind of a learning experience, another way to look at the cards and to learn from them and to learn from life as well, the human development, and to kind of see the bigger picture when it comes to the human experience. The aces correspond to the sun, the planet, because each card corresponds to a planet, but they also correspond to tarot cards. Aces represent the teens, and it could be any of the suits. I'm just using the diamond suit for the purposes of this video. It's the first double-digit time that we are experiencing. The red aces correspond to the moon, major arcana card, and the black aces correspond to the sun, major arcana cards. So the sun, the aces, it's the very first number in a playing card deck, and this reflects new experiences, new things, right? And it's something that we're not quite familiar with. And that's what happens when we're in our teens. There's a lot of newness in life, and we're experiencing a lot of things for the first time. And in our teens, some people experience their first kiss and a lot of first things, maybe their first vacation or first time out of the city. Essentially what this means, though, is just learning about oneself. So in our teens, we're learning about ourselves, our value, our worth, what is worth our time, our energy, our efforts. When there's a lot of newness, there's a lot of excitement, but there's also a lot of things that we're uncertain about, that we doubt. So that's what we kind of experience with our teens. And if we're talking about ace of spades, we're talking about a new ways of feeling confident about who we are. So in our teens, a lot of times we're not confident in who we are. We're very awkward a lot of times. We could be pretending to be confident or pretending to be this person, but we're not really quite confident in ourselves, and we're learning to be confident in ourselves. Ace of hearts are new feelings, new emotions. So there could be new feelings and emotions, new love that we're experiencing. Ace of clubs is learning new things. We're constantly learning new things. We're kind of like a sponge in our teens. And ace of diamonds is just learning our worth. Like I mentioned before, learning our worth, learning what is worth our time and energy, learning value, money. We might get our first job in our teens and learning the value of money and what we can buy with money and things like that. Twos correspond to our 20s and what it's like in our 20s. So all twos are relate to the planet, relate to the moon, basically. All twos relate to the moon, and they all correspond to the emperor and empress. Okay, and so with the 20s, twos represent connecting to something, right? So a lot of times we get into relationships. Some people get married in their 20s. It's really about bonding and connecting to something that's deep and meaningful to a person. A lot of people are dating at this time, and in our 20s, the possibilities are endless. Like, we can make so many mistakes in our 20s, and we can go into a career that's not right for us. We can, date people that's not right for us, and that's okay because we are still young. And a lot of times in our 20s and teens, and as a kid, we think that we are invincible, that nothing's going to hurt us, nothing's going to stop us. So this is a really good time where possibilities are endless. And that is, the number 2. Anytime you're doing divination and a 2 pops up, you want to think, definitely possibilities. So there's a lot of connections happening at this time. The number 2 also corresponds to getting our needs met, getting what we need when we need it. That is the number 2. And a person in their 20s, they're looking to get certain needs met, even sexual needs, right? Because a lot of times in our teens or 20s, we have the most sexual energy, and we're looking for getting different needs met in so many different ways. So this could be just kind of an exciting time in our lives, and we could be looking for comforts. We can still be looking towards the future. What life or lifestyle is going to provide the best for my future? Will this career be the best for me? Will this partner be the best for me? And it's kind of tricky because in our 20s, we're still quite young, and we need to experience a lot of different things to kind of know what is right for us. So we are very open to different experiences, and hopefully those experiences will land us in positions that we can benefit from those decisions in our later years. The 3s correspond to our 30s. Okay, it's the 3rd decade we're looking at, so to speak. And 3s correspond to the Mars energy. Okay, Mars is very active. It's that masculine energy, going after things. And the red 3s correspond to the Temperance card. The black 3s correspond to the Strength card. 3s are not the easiest numbers, right? They're not the easiest number cards because it takes effort. It's not like the 2s where it's the moon energy, which is receptive. It's not like, we're receiving new friends, we're receiving our, the dates, and it's, we're receiving these experiences in life. 3s are putting a lot of effort into things, right? So in our 20s, we might have made a lot of poor choices, or we might have made some good choices. But sometimes what happens in our 30s, we're trying to okay, that didn't work out. I kind of learned from that. Let me go in this direction. So the 30s might be more of actively pursuing the career that might be better aligned to who we are. We might be more focused if we're going to school in our 30s. If you're raising a family, that takes a lot of effort and energy to do so. So the 30s can be a busy time in our life, And I also think of the 30s because the 3s have to do with growth, because we're putting so much energy into something, so much focus. Those are all Martian things, which has to do with the planet Mars, that we're growing from those, we're learning from those, and we could be developing new skills, new talents, inspirations. Whatever our focus and attention is on, we're going to grow from that. And sometimes growth comes with growing pains, and it can be painful, and but it's rewarding too once we come out on top, once we see that our efforts have been realized. 3s also have to do with the hard work, the struggle, right? Putting in the hard work. And it also has to do with taking risks, right? Sometimes we don't know if this is the career for us, or sometimes we don't know if studying 8 years to be a doctor is going to be something that we want to do, but we take that risk. Okay, so threes have to do with taking that risk. Mars is all about, going out there, putting the energy and effort into something, and we don't know what the outcome is. So threes, aces, twos, and threes all have to do with possibilities. So in our 30s, we still have a lot of possibilities out there. We're still young, and we can still make mistakes and still, rewrite our path and kind of redirect our energies and figure out what it is that we want to do. We still have plenty of time to do that. And, I didn't marry the right person, or I wasn't with that right person, or I didn't find the job fulfilling. And so I'm going to change directions, right? So the 30s are taking risks. It's also about having focused. You still have energy. You're actively pursuing the things that you love. You're learning about temperance too, right? And so learning to be patient, learning to do the hard work now, and hopefully that hard work will pay off in the future. It's not instant gratification. And you're learning to be strong physically as well, tilling the soil, putting the work in, grinding, hustling. Those are our 30s. And the next one, we have the 4. Okay, so the number 4 corresponds to our 40s. And the 4s connect to the Mercury planet. The red 4s correspond to the High Priestess, and the black 4s correspond to the Hierophant. 4s are all about stability and security. And if we put a lot of hard work into our lives in our 30s, into our studies, into our personal growth and well-being, and into our relationships, whatever the case may be, into our money, okay, if we invested well, we can receive the rewards. And that's what 4 represents. It can represent a family, some kind of financial security from the hard work we put in, like the logic and the strategies we used in our 30s. And 40s has a lot to do with enjoying the hard work. It has to do with things working out because of the effort we put in to something, and also being more confident in ourselves, more skillful, more knowledgeable. A lot of times when people are in their 40s, they've had enough life experience. They're in their middle ages, so they've had enough life experiences to not really to kind of know in general what they want, what path they want to go on, how they want to live the rest of their lives. And so 40s tend to be a more stable and secure decade for most people. And this is in general, of course, it's different for each person. The 5s correspond to the 50s and to Jupiter. And the red 5s correspond to the Justice Tarot cards, and the black 5s correspond to the Judgment Tarot card. 5s has to do with changes, and we can go through a lot of changes in our 50s, and it's different for each person. And if you have kids, you might be dealing with the empty nest, right? So maybe your kids are 18 and adults, and so this is a new transition. Maybe your children are leaving the home, and so now it's just you and your partner, if you have one. And so it's just this huge change in your life. There could be more of a change because you have changed. You're in your 50s. Maybe your long-term relationship or spouse, maybe that's not working anymore. Okay, so there can be some changes that happen in your 50s, and you're like, this isn't what I want anymore. The stable life, what was stable in my 40s, it might be boring, because 40s can also be, 4s can correspond to things being boring. So how can I have more excitement in my life? Okay, so sometimes 50s is about going out there, and maybe there's been an internal change within you, and so you're looking for that change out there to match that energy. You can make changes to your home even. And again, fives correspond to Jupiter. So Jupiter is about seeing the bigger picture. Maybe you see the bigger picture. Things become clearer to you. After that, time of stability, being on a certain job for a while, having that financial security, you see the bigger picture. You're like, hey, maybe I don't need the things that I thought I needed. Maybe I don't need as big of a home, this huge home that I live in. Maybe I can downsize, right? Or maybe you've outgrown your home or your city and it's time for a change. It's time to move. Okay. Fives can indicate moving. Okay. So you could move somewhere. What once worked is no longer working. And that's the 5 energy. 6s correspond to our 60s, and Venus represents the 6 cards. And what correlates to the red 6? Well, we have the devil, and the black 6s correspond to the Lovers tarot card. Venus, the 60s are all about fulfillment, and it's the most fulfillment we're going to get in the world. People tend to retire in their 60s, even though these days a lot of people are retiring in their 70s. The retirement age keeps creeping up, but in general, a lot of people retire in their 60s. And this is a time to kind of enjoy life, take the vacations that you weren't able to take when you were working and grinding. The 60s are the time to just kind of enjoy life, especially if you have grandchildren. You can spend more time with your grandchildren and actually enjoy being with them and your children. You spend time with your significant other and creating a lifestyle that works for you, and doing more things that are restful, that are more peaceful. The 6 cards have to do with the most fulfillment we're going to have in this world. Okay. And I'm not talking about the blissed out fulfillment. That is the number 9. We can enjoy life. We have a lot of experience in life, a lot of wisdom, and a lot of times people have raised their kids already by their 60s, and they're just kind of kicking up their feet. And a lot of times people who are in their 60s, they're learning to be satisfied with what they have, what they did in life, and just kind of reflecting and just saying, I did things that I liked, I did things that I didn't like, but I'm accepting that. And that's what the 60s are about. Next, we have the 70s. I realized that I used the 7 card for the 50s. Sorry about that. These got scrambled up. But yeah, 70s. 70s. 7s correspond to Saturn. The red 7s correspond to the Death card, and the black 7s correspond to the Tower card. Saturn is the planet that has to do with things breaking down, things no longer working. And it's, like the major arcana card that rules the 7s. Our body isn't working as well as it did when we were younger. We have aches and pains. Our body starts to slow down a bit, and we definitely see the limitations in our bodies. And that's what 7s represent. They represent the limitations in life. And also in our 70s, a lot of our friends and family members really start dying, unfortunately, and it can be a very sad period for a lot of people. And the 70s is a time of letting go. We kind of have to let go of expectations, let go of people in a physical way too, because they are leaving us. And acceptance is huge with Saturn and the number 7, and just kind of accepting this stage in our lives where things aren't how they used to be. Your eyes aren't working as well as they used to. Your hearing, maybe you didn't accomplish everything that you wanted to accomplish, or what you had hoped for your kids are not coming to pass. So there's a lot of limitations that we are understanding, and it's a lot different from our 20s where there's this full life ahead of us. A lot of people are dying in their 70s, you know? So it can be a time that can be very real, and for a lot of people it can be a sad time. Sevens have to do with detachment, so it's learning to kind of detach from things. Eights correspond to the 80s, when we're in our 80s, and it corresponds to Rahu, which is the north node of the moon. The black eights correspond to the Chariot tarot card, and the red eights correspond to the Hangman tarot card. Rahu has to do with the moon, and it has to do with reflecting. And the 80s, if we make it to our 80s, we are reflecting a lot. We're reflecting on our lives. Hopefully we are understanding that, you know, the experiences that we had in the world are a reflection of what we have inside. And what we have inside of us is how we experience the world. So, and we're learning to have like what's called a friendship with the things of the world. We are accepting things like we did in our 70s, but on a deeper level. And we are seeing ourselves as a part of how things went down, right? And not necessarily seeing ourselves as a victim, but just like, hey, you know, I played a part in this and how this played out, you know? And so it's a deep understanding of our lives. The Hangman has to do with total acceptance, right? There's certain things that we just have zero control over. And that's when we're hanging upside down. And we can become enlightened or somewhat enlightened because we're seeing things from a different perspective, not the way we used to see it. We start seeing things as a journey, kind of like the Chariot tarot card. And that this journey, you know, has bumps. It has its pros and cons, but it's the journey that we have, and it's a reflection of us and who we are. We realize that life only gets so good, and we accept the, you know, the lot that we were given. We understand that life is not easy for anyone, and life throws us different curveballs. That's what Rahu does. And all of that is for growth. It's so that we can grow. And so in our 80s, hopefully we understand that all of the wild things we experienced was for our personal growth, and to do better and to become more enlightened. Because what good is it to have a world where there's world peace 100%, no bad things that are happening? How can we grow from that? Okay, and so our 80s, hopefully before our 80s, but in our 80s, we hopefully understand that all the bad things we experienced was for our enlightenment, our growth, and to become stronger and better people. Rahu is the planet of self-transformation. So it's about transforming ourselves. It's about alchemy. It's about being a totally different being. So hopefully by our 80s, we are this bigger and better being. The nines correspond to the 90s. 90s correspond to K2, and the red nines correspond to the Fool card, and the black nines correspond to the Hermit. And in our 90s, a lot of people are hermits, reflecting within. They're not doing too much in general. They're not really going out, hanging out places in general. They're very like inward. Okay, the hermits are introspective. They are introverts in general, so they're not extroverting as they used to in their 90s, and everything is kind of within. And K2's like that. A person with planets in K2, those planets become introverted. A lot of times we can look at someone who's in their 90s who's very slow, right? They tend to be very slow moving, and they, you know, stumble over their words. They can seem foolish, but if they still have their wits about them, they're not foolish. They have so much wisdom, so much internal growth. They just know so much. They have, experiences. And I wish in the Western societies in general, I wish we respected our elders more and have them teach more of our young people. But anyway, that's another subject for another day. The 90s is about getting rid of the gunk, right? Getting rid of anything that no longer serves us in our mind. It's about liberation. Okay, so we can be getting rid of physical things actually in our 90s, like, oh, you have this, you have that, I don't need it. I don't need, a lot of older people get rid of their stuff and they can let go of things. They can be very charitable and generous. That's what nines represent. In our 90s, a lot of times our senses have dulled. Okay, so K2 is the south node of the moon, and the moon itself has to do with our perception of the world, all of our senses. A person who's in their 90s, a lot of times their senses aren't there anymore. They don't see that well. They don't hear that well. They don't taste that well. And that's because they're withdrawing from the world, literally, slowly. And so slowly, and obviously this can happen before then, this can happen to someone, unfortunately, in their 30s, for whatever reason. But I'm talking about in general, someone in their 90s, their senses can be, withdrawing. They can start losing their senses. In our 90s, we are withdrawing from the world, literally, where our bodies are really breaking down if we make it to our 90s. And that's when we actually become liberated, because we're not so attached to our bodies and we're letting it go. We're letting material things go as well. That is liberation, when we can kind of detach from it all. And a lot of times we're in this blissed out state when we don't see the difference between this and that, right? When we have sight and when we have sound, we can, just talking about sight in and of itself, we can like focus too much on, oh, this person's this color or this person is this religion. When we're losing our senses, first of all, that probably doesn't matter as much. But second of all, we can't really experience it. So that's what the number 9 is. It represents the totality of everything and the wholeness of everything. We don't say this is good and this is bad. Everything is just one. And that is what enlightenment is. It's just everything is God. Okay, so a person in their 90s, or a person who deeply is discovering the 9 energy, they realize that everything is of God. Okay, and that is true enlightenment. And once we are done with the 90s, and if we make it to our 100s, which is the 10s, and then we're on a whole nother level. Okay, so the 10s correspond to the ecliptic, and the black 10s correspond to the magician tarot card, and the red tarot card corresponds to the wheel of fortune. If we make it to being in our hundreds, we're on a whole different level, and we're ready to go to a different realm. We're ready to experience a whole nother life experience. If you believe in reincarnation, at some point that person will be reincarnated and they're going to start another cycle. And a lot of people believe that whatever you experienced in this lifetime, it's not like you have a clean slate. You're kind of picking up where you left off, and that's where you are going. And so being in your hundreds, or if you pass away and now you're in your 10s, you're on a whole nother level. It's not like you're starting backwards or starting over from your previous lifetime. You're taking what you learned from those previous lifetimes into a new cycle. And so when we go to this new cycle or this next level, basically we've burned the karma that we needed to burn this lifetime. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you want me to talk about the cards, and if so, what topics do you want me to talk about? And if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe and all of that. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.